Hi guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching this week's YouTube video. And the topic is driving. And it's a very contentious, controversial topic that we're going to address today. Driving, wherever you are in the world, certainly in the Western world, our goal when we're growing up is to get our driver's license. One of the things we want to do is achieve our driver's license because we're grown up then, we're adults and we got our driver's license, and I've got my freedom, I've got my independence, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I know from my own family, when they pass their driving test, which in the US is a lot younger than what it is in the UK, you get your permit a lot younger than you can get it in the UK. So usually by the time people are 16, they're driving. And, almost every man, woman and child has got a car, or at least has a driver's license and access to a vehicle. And it's the independence that is so important here. So the independence and the freedom, because I can go wherever I like now. And I'm empowered and I'm a grown-up and all those kind of things that come with it, all that excitement. If you belong to the school of thought that I belong to, I would rather ride a horse than drive a car. I don't like driving. It's not something that I've ever enjoyed. I've never enjoyed it. It's never been something that I've wanted to do all my life or anything like that. I've been driving since I was 18. But it was not something that, I could take it or leave it. However, when it comes to talking about not being able to drive anymore, for whatever reason, age, can't afford it, disability, whatever reason, then it becomes an issue, and it becomes a big issue. And depending on where you live, and depending on what your support network is, and depending on your mindset, determines how impactful not being able to drive anymore is. So that's what I want to focus on. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how we can pre-plan any disappointment or any future pending disappointment of having our driver's license revoked by the authorities or by a medical practitioner, and what impact that has on people when that happens. So as many of you know now, I live in Arizona, and I live in northern Arizona. And where I live, you need transport. There is no access to public transport. You can't catch a bus. You can't catch a train. There are no trains here in where we live. So we very much rely and depend on our vehicle. And my practice is maybe 2.5 hours away from where I actually live, because my practice is just outside Phoenix and I live north of that. So I have to drive down to the valley at least twice a week. And if I didn't have a vehicle, then I would be inconvenienced and I would have to rely on someone else to take me there. So I have to think about when I no longer require a vehicle, and I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when I don't have to drive anymore. But
So do the rest of the people on the road.
Yes, as you can tell, I'm joined by the very cheeky and mischievous Lynn Nightingale here again. Just on that note, whenever we're together, she insists on driving. She doesn't want me to drive.
Because he's a Brit and he drives on the wrong side of the road, okay? That's why.
Oh, dear me. So just bringing this back to people who have a disability, or people who, for whatever reason, have to think about not driving anymore. And it's probably something that will happen to all of us at some point. So many people who are living with a neurocognitive disorder do not relish the thought of not being able to drive anymore. it's like another thing that is being taken away from them. Another thing that you're telling me I can't do anymore, and it impacts negatively on my life because if only I could drive to the supermarket. That's all I want to do, drive to the supermarket. But it's not as simple as that. There's a lot more to it than that. So pre-planning is really important so that we minimize the detrimental effect and the negative impact that revoking somebody's driver's license, or not necessarily revoking it, but encouraging someone to give up their driver's license, which would be the better option, because it means that person's empowered and in control. Okay, so that has to be part of the pre-planning process. Part of the pre-planning process has to involve the individual. In the video we talked about last week, we talked about Tom Kittlund's 5 psychological needs. And one of them is inclusion. And inclusion in pre-planning is really important. So it's talking to the individual about what the negative impact is of continuing to drive and how that may put you and other people at risk. And one of the big issues and one of the big challenges is if somebody who has a neurocognitive impairment, a diagnosis of, for example, Alzheimer's disease, if that person continues to drive and has an accident, then they will be sued up the wazoo, because that's what people do. So it's really important to think about those things and think about, okay, I'm not just putting myself at risk, but I'm putting other people at risk. And anybody who drives in Phoenix, anywhere really in Arizona, will understand how you have to be on your A game every single time you get behind that wheel, because people speed, people drive inappropriately, they don't care about other people on the road. If you're not going more than 10 or 15 miles per hour over the speed limit, then they're right behind you and they're screaming at you and shouting at you and gesticulating at you. So you always have to be on your A game. And sometimes when we have a cognitive challenge, we're not there. We don't think as quickly, we don't react as quickly, and we really need to, and especially in places like Arizona. So that has to be part of the pre-planning process. You have to think about safety for everybody. And then you also have to include in that pre-planning process, okay, so Lynn, we get to the point where you may no longer be able to drive, okay? Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do instead? Because Lynn's a very active person, she has a lot to do, she's always on her feet, she's always on the go, she's always going somewhere and doing something. How are we going to maintain that level of independence? Because that's really important. And of course, people can use a cab, they can use Uber, they can use Lyft. They're very expensive modes of transport. Another option, another opportunity is to use a transport support service that are available. And here in the US, there is medical transport services that are accessed through people's medical insurance. But there's also outside agencies, for example, an organisation called Paratransit that a number of my patients use now that they've got to that point where driving is no longer an option. So in order to maintain their independence, they will use something like paratransit services. Some people may use Uber or Lyft. Depends on their circumstances, depends on where they live, and all those kind of things. But what we're trying to do in the pre-planning process is maintain as much independence for that person as possible. We don't want to strip them of something else that they can't do, because we want to maintain inclusion, socialization, engagement. So people need to continue going to the gym, going to the pool, going shopping, and all those other fun things that people do. So it's really important to think about that. But number one in importance is including that individual in the decision-making process. I would recommend that when you are having the discussion, and whether it's a family discussion or whatever, on a one-to-one or whatever it is, record it. Record the conversation, record the discussion, and document the conversation. Because, of course, with people who have cognitive challenges, short-term memory is likely to be an issue. So if somebody, when it comes to the time when we're saying now is the time not to drive anymore, and we discussed this earlier, and if somebody says, well, I don't remember that, we never talked about it, which is likely to happen and does happen, then we can refer them to the video, because hey, look at this, we made this decision together, you were the one who made that final decision, and here's the video of you making that final decision. So it validates everybody, and it's, you know, we're all about validation, inclusion and validation. So do that. That's my big key suggestion when you have a discussion, really about anything that is really important. You know, that, and yeah, including financial discussions and arrangements, and you know, things that are key to people's lives, and offering power of attorney and medical power of attorney and mental health power of attorney. You know, those things being documented is one thing, and obviously it has to be documented legally, but doing a video is validation, and we are all fortunate right now that we have technology where we can do that in the modern day. So those are the things I wanted to talk about. Those are the things I wanted to get across, and those are the key things I want you to think about. Pre-planning, always pre-planning. Unfortunately, I end up in a situation with my patients where there has been no pre-planning, and it's a doctor's recommendation that you don't drive anymore, and then it's reported, of course, to the DMV, and in the UK to the DVLA. So be involved, pre-plan, think ahead. You do it with other things in life. You know, people pre-plan funerals, people prepare for their funeral plot, their burial plot, and they talk about they pre-plan for life insurance and things like that. This is equally as important. So that's what I wanted to get across in today's video. And Lynn may have some questions. Yes, she does. Okay.
I have some comments.
Okay.
How do you sell it to your relative that it's a good thing? Perhaps if there's some, you know, acrimony going on about why they shouldn't stop driving.
Well, again, it has to be inclusion, because when people are in the beginning of their journey through cognitive change, this is the time when people can think logically. This is the time when people can agree and say, yeah, that is a good point. The fact that I may get to a point in my journey where I put myself at risk or other people at risk if I continue to drive. And I think it's a good idea that I have this in place. So I think the important part of that is having the discussion very early on. And it doesn't even have to be when we have a cognitive challenge. It can be at any time. I mean, I've already done it. I've already, you know, decided as soon as I retire from my practice, I will no longer drive. I have no desire to drive. I have no need or want to drive. And Lynn will be happy about that decision. So I think it has to be, that's when it has to be, that point. It's like when we give power of attorney, or when we write a will, we have to be of sound mind. And so that's when we need to be able to make those decisions.
So let's talk about a situation where you're the spouse and you're very concerned about your spouse's driving and their inability to drive as well as they were before, and you don't want to antagonize or cause arguments, but you're very concerned. Do you gently approach that topic with your spouse? Do you bring it up at the next doctor's appointment? In other words, is it a good idea to take the blame off the spouse telling the other spouse they shouldn't drive and put it on the doctor instead. Put it on you.
That is one option. That is one option. But I think having a discussion with the person first and foremost is important. And then if the individual understands, that's great, well and good, isn't it? If the individual doesn't understand and there is conflict and there is a difference of opinion, that is the point where you say, okay, when we have our next appointment with the neurologist or whoever it might be, that's when I'm going to raise this issue about the safety element of your driving. And if you get more people on board, and ultimately if it needs the doctor to make that decision to revoke the license, then that's what has to happen. Then we have to pick up the pieces afterwards. And in Arizona, not sure if we have this in the UK, we never used to have, we might now. We have things like silver alerts that go out. So if we are concerned about somebody who's driving and we know they shouldn't be, but they've managed to get hold of the keys and they've got out in the car, then a silver alert is initiated, which activates people's phones and also the matrix system on the roads, and it gives you the license number and the type of car, and so everybody looks out for that. So there are reactive strategies in place, and I think if we need to be reactive, then we have to be reactive, and we have to pick up the pieces afterwards.
What about some of your patients? They end up being referred to a third-party driving assessment establishment. What do you think of that?
I think that's a fantastic resource. The reason being is a relative can say, Lynn has run over the curb or got lost and I'm worried about her driving, and so the doctor might say, well, I don't think it's a good idea for you to drive anymore. Or the doctor might say, I think I need to report this and revoke your license, have your license revoked.
And I say, no, I'm okay, I can drive.
That's right. So the resource that you allude to, Lynn, is an excellent resource because it's usually run by occupational therapists who are trained to evaluate an individual's driving skill and ability.
Decision making.
Right. So and then when they do that evaluation, do that assessment, they will feed back to said referrer, to said doctor, and say, yeah, we recommend this person doesn't drive anymore, or we find this person to be able to continue driving and recommend that there is another evaluation in 12 months' time, for example. I think it's a fantastic resource because then the relative isn't making the decision, so the relative's not the enemy, the doctor's not the enemy because they're not making that final decision. The occupational therapist is making that evaluation and then making the recommendation. So if you want to blame anybody, you can blame the evaluator at the driving resource centre. So I think it's an excellent thing. And they don't just evaluate people with cognitive change, it's other disabilities as well, and illnesses and things. So I think it's a fantastic resource. And I would recommend that to everybody. If you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or whatever neurocognitive process is going on, go and have that evaluation, because that gives everybody peace of mind. So if they say, which they should in the early stages, there shouldn't be a problem with driving, yeah, you're good to go, that's fine, we would recommend we see you again in 12 months' time. That means everybody has peace of mind. And again, I think that has to be part of the pre-planning process, to have that in there. So as soon as somebody gets a diagnosis, in the very early stages, let's go and get an evaluation for driving. So everybody's assured and confident that everything's okay. because, people's observations are often inaccurate. So it's okay for somebody to say your driving isn't like it used to be, or I don't think you're fit to drive anymore. That's just somebody's opinion. And an actual evaluation is just like when we take a driving test and we either pass or fail.
Speaking of assurances, how do you reassure your loved one who maybe the decision's been made by either the doctor or a third-party assessment, or the person themselves have decided, okay, I'm not going to drive anymore? How do you reassure them that they're not going to lose their independence, and
Right.
how do you support that person?
Yeah. Again, that is by ensuring that people have the resource, access to the resource like paratransit or access to other transport services that are available. I think, again, they have to be aware of that. And many of my patients, until I tell them about it, if they come and say, look, the neurologist has told me I can't drive anymore, they don't know anything about the resource that's available. So I think it's really important that they are aware of that right at the beginning, as we said, right in the pre-planning process. There are services and there are people out there that can help you. And with things like paratransit, it's a lot cheaper than using Uber or Lyft or a cab. I think they charge currently, so this is now, I think it's $5 to and from. So they will pick you up from home, they will take you to wherever you're going, whether it's the swimming pool, whether it's the gym, whether it's shopping, or whether it's to a doctor's appointment. They'll take you and then they'll come and pick you up at an agreed time. So that service is maintains people's independence, which is a great thing, and it's certainly something in my pre-planning.
Plus, your loved ones will be there to pick up the slack and drive you around and take care of you. And wouldn't that be nice to not have to drive? And
wouldn't it be wonderful? I really enjoy it when I'm not driving. When I'm passenger, that's my favourite thing, because I can have a sleep. I can't have a sleep if I'm driving. So. And I like my little snoozes.
Anything else you want to add about driving and independence?
I think we have to be sensible. I think it has to be a structured approach, and it has to be proactive and constructive. So once we've got those things together and we video it, really important to video the conversation and the decision-making process. Have it documented. Video, and of course, if there's legal input, then it obviously has to be documented. So, pre-plan. Always pre-plan. And whilst you're having the pre-planning meeting, don't drink soda. No soda. Drink tea. Okay. So, thank you for listening, and I hope this has been useful. And please share it. And please share the channel, the YouTube channel. The more people that are aware of free access to this resource, the better, because there's many videos. We put one on every Wednesday on different topics. So share it, and also share our website, drdanielnightingale.com. Follow me on Instagram. That's available, because we're always posting things on there as well. And continue to use us as a resource. We want to make sure we're giving people accurate, up-to-date information. So stick with us, keep watching our videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel. As I said, the more people that subscribe, the more people that access these educational videos, the better. So have a fantastic week, and we'll see you in a week's time.